Some dinners don't just leave you hungry, they hollow out something in your heart that never quite fills again. That night, in a fine restaurant in downtown Seattle, a young woman was humiliated by her own family, cast out from their table simply because she was adopted. Amid the crystal lights and cold glances, a man sat quietly in the corner, watching everything unfold. He didn't know her name, but when she lifted her chin and walked away, he knew he had just witnessed the strongest person he would ever meet. And from that moment on began a journey of pain, trust, and love born from the rain of Seattle, where no one could have imagined that wounds could bloom into light. Seattle, on an October night, a thin drizzle fell against the glass walls of the Meridian, where warm golden light shimmered through each drop like crystal. People say Seattle is a city of quiet souls, and tonight, in that soft glow, one sat perfectly still, small and silent among the clinking of silverware and crystal glasses. Ashley Crudell. She sat at the end of the long table, beside her adoptive mother, Crudell, a woman who smiled graciously to the world, but never warmly at the daughter she had taken in out of kindness. Across from Ashley was Paisley, her adoptive sister, slender in a white satin dress, flawless, radiant, and wearing the kind of arrogance that had long become her signature. On the table were perfectly roasted lamb chops, red wine swirling in crystal, polite laughter, expensive perfume, and conversations that danced only around money, reputation, and hollow compliments. Ashley sat still, hands resting quietly in her lap, careful not to disturb the fragile illusion of peace. She once believed silence was the only way to survive in this family, and for years, that's how she lived, silent, enduring, patient, so no one would see her heart quietly drying out. "So, you're still living in that old apartment?" Delaine's voice was soft as a breeze, but sharp underneath. Ashley looked up. "Yes, Mother, it's enough for me." "Enough?" Paisley let out a thin laugh, delicate and cruel. How charming. Must be fascinating living among mold and leaking pipes. A few chuckles rippled around the table. No one stopped her. No one ever did. Ashley only smiled faintly. "I'm used to it." The gentleness of her reply made Paisley frown slightly. She didn't want Ashley used to it. She wanted her hurt. "Actually," Paisley said, setting her wine glass down, her tone suddenly soft, and everyone who knew her understood. When Paisley softened her voice, something was coming. "You know, Ashley, I think it's time we clarified a few things, because it seems you've been a little confused about your place here." The room fell silent. Relatives, friends, business partners all turned their heads, ready for the show they'd seen before. "Paisley," Delaine spoke quietly, half warning, half encouragement. Ashley felt her heartbeat slow. "What do you mean, Paisley?" "Oh, nothing," Paisley said sweetly, shrugging. "I just feel sorry for you, really. You keep trying so hard to be part of this family, but the truth is, you never will be." The words dropped like a needle through glass. Someone held their breath. Ashley looked around. No one met her eyes. "You don't need to be anything," Ashley said quietly, steady. "It's you who forgets you were adopted too." For a moment, Paisley's smile froze. Then she laughed, sharp and brittle, not the same. "I was adopted as a baby, when I still had a chance to become family. You," she leaned forward, her voice just loud enough for everyone to hear, "you were charity, a photo opportunity. Don't confuse that with love." The silence that followed was suffocating. Delaine said nothing. No one did. Ashley looked down. Her heart tightened, but her lips curved in a thin, fragile smile. "Come now," a man at the table said awkwardly, forcing a laugh. "We're having dinner, let's not get too serious." But Paisley didn't stop. "I just want clarity. You sit at this table, but that doesn't mean you belong here. And honestly, Ashley, you owe us more than you realize." Ashley lifted her head, meeting her sister's eyes. "I don't owe anyone anything." Paisley smirked and gestured to a waiter, who returned with folded paper. He placed a bill in front of Ashley. "Since you want to be fair," Paisley said, "here's your share of dinner, $5,000. A wave of whispers passed through the table. No one believed she'd actually do it. But Paisley just sat there, arms folded, eyes calm and unwavering. Ashley looked down at the bill. The numbers blurred behind the tears she refused to let fall. $5,000 more than 2 months of her salary. The air was thick. Deline bowed her head, silent. No one defended her. No one moved. Ashley stood. Slowly. I don't have $5,000, but I have something you don't. Paisley raised a brow. And what's that? Self-respect. The words sliced through the air. Ashley picked up her purse and turned to leave. She walked, step by step, under the gaze of a dozen eyes. When the glass doors of the Meridian closed behind her, the laughter and music inside became another world. Outside, the wind was cold, the rain light, the street lamps glowing on the wet pavement. Ashley stood there, alone. Her hands trembled, but she didn't cry. No, she wouldn't give Paisley that power. She let out a long breath and smiled faintly. At least this time, I didn't stay silent. And then, a voice spoke behind her. That line deserves to be heard twice. She turned. A man, dark suit, rain-damp hair, calm eyes stood beneath the awning. I'm Tully, he said, and you're probably the only person in that room with dignity. Ashley stepped back slightly, instinctively guarded. Are you following me? No, Tully said gently. I just happened to see someone walk out of a dinner like she'd dropped the world's weight off her shoulders, and I thought someone should tell her she wasn't wrong. Ashley gave a weary smile. Right or wrong doesn't matter anymore. Tully stepped closer, pulling a folded paper from his coat. I think you dropped this. The $5,000 bill. Ashley looked at it, then shook her head. No, I left it. You shouldn't carry someone else's burden, he said quietly. Then he tore the paper in half and tossed it into a nearby trash bin like a small ritual that somehow carried weight. Silence. Then Ashley exhaled, her voice trembling faintly. Thank you, but you didn't have to do that. I know. Then why? Because I could. His answer made her laugh softly, tears still bright in her eyes. That's such a rich person thing to say. Maybe, Tully said, but not because of money, because I hate unfairness. The rain began to fall harder. Tully tilted his head toward a nearby alley glowing with neon reflections. Coffee? He asked. There's a place around the corner. No names, no stories, just two people needing somewhere quiet. Ashley hesitated. Part of her wanted to return to her tiny apartment, her small, safe world. But his eyes, not pitying, not curious, held something steady, something she wanted to believe in. Okay, she said softly, but I can't promise I'll be cheerful. Fair enough. Tully smiled. I'm not great at comforting people anyway. They walked through the rain, side by side but not touching. Their footsteps mixed with the sound of water on stone. A small cafe appeared, Rainlight Cafe, its warm glow spilled onto the street, and soft jazz hummed inside. Only 2 customers remained, and a tired barista was wiping down tables. Ashley sat by the window, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. I don't know if I should feel thankful or embarrassed, she said. Both work, Tully replied with a smile. But I'd choose thankful. I just skipped my most important meeting of the week to have coffee with you. Ashley laughed, a slight, real sound. So you must be someone important. I used to think so, he said. Until tonight. She looked up. Their eyes met. Tully's gaze didn't waver, as if seeing something rare, something honest. You know, he said quietly, I've met many people rich, powerful, fake, but very few stay calm when humiliated. You didn't shout, you didn't fight, you just stood and left. That's the hardest thing. Ashley was silent. Only the rain filled the space between them. Then she whispered, I learned that the hard way. And you still didn't lose your kindness. The words struck something profound, not pain, but the ache of being seen. Ashley lowered her gaze, smiling softly. You don't know me. Then let me, Tully said. Outside, the rain stopped. Inside, warmth rose from 2 steaming cups. Ashley felt something unfamiliar for the first time in years. She didn't feel alone. When they left the cafe, Tully handed her a business card. I don't expect you to call, he said. But if you need someone, try me one day. Ashley took it, silent, and nodded. Outside, the city glimmered as if pain had never existed. On her way home, she wondered, could this be the beginning of something good? Then she smiled. Probably not, she whispered. Men like him don't notice girls like me. But back in the cafe, Tully Shepherd still sat by the window, his coffee gone cold, a faint smile on his lips, and in the dim light through the glass, he knew, that night, he met the woman who would change his life. Seattle woke the next morning under a veil of mist. The sky was pale grey, without sunlight, only the cool, damp air drifting through the streets. The city stirred slowly, raindrops from the night before still clinging to windows and car roofs. Ashley woke early, though she had no reason to. She sat by the small table in her one-bedroom apartment on Capitol Hill, soft light filtering through the blinds, mingling with the faint aroma of coffee she had just brewed. On the table lay a white business card. Thick paper, embossed letters, Tully Shepherd Innovations. Beneath it, in smaller print, sometimes you just need someone to listen. Ashley turned the card in her hand. She thought of last night, the rain, the cafe, the quiet conversation. Strangely, the memory didn't sting. It felt gentle. It had been long since someone had looked at her without contempt, pity, or judgment. Just looked, truly looked. But reason spoke up. Don't get carried away, Ashley. Who was he? A successful man, wealthy, confident, and her, just a woman with a past no one cared to hear. She set the card down and forced her mind toward work. At 8, she left her apartment, wrapped in a beige coat, and stepped into the damp morning. Seattle was still glistening. Small cafes were already open, the air rich with the scent of toasted bread. She passed Pike Place Market, the flower sellers arranging tulips and sunflowers, and elderly regulars lining up for coffee. Then her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Hello? A calm, deep voice she recognized instantly. It's Tully. Coffee this morning, are you free? She froze for a second. How did you get my number? I didn't, he said. I asked the barista at Rainlight Cafe. She said you're a regular. I just took a guess. Ashley laughed softly. Do you always try this hard with strangers? No, he replied, gentle but firm. Only with the ones who remind me the world's still kind. The line went quiet for a moment. Then she smiled and glanced at her watch. I teach at 10:30. 9 o'clock then. I promise I won't make you late. 10 minutes later, she walked into Rainlight Cafe. It looked the same as last night, but now filled with silver daylight. Tully sat in the corner, sleeves rolled up, an espresso in hand. He smiled when he saw her. You came for the coffee, she said, half teasing. The best reason there is, he replied, pulling out her chair. They sat facing each other. No small talk, no awkward politeness, just an ease, as if they'd known each other long ago and were picking up where they left off. Tully asked about her work at the Rainlight Community Center. Ashley told him she taught literacy classes for adults people society had forgotten, people who'd never had the chance to learn, but still wanted to read stories to their children. My job isn't much, she said, but at least it makes me feel useful. Tully listened closely, his gaze steady. Don't you see how extraordinary that is? Extraordinary? She laughed. I teach people how to spell the word dream. It's the smallest thing I know. Tully shook his head. No, Ashley. You're teaching them they have the right to dream. I could have used someone like you when I was 15. She paused. You? He nodded, smiling faintly. I grew up in a rough part of Tacoma. My father died early, and my mother worked 3 jobs. I thought the world only belonged to other people until a teacher looked at me and said, You're not invisible, Tully. He stopped, his eyes distant for a moment. You remind me of her. Ashley sat quietly. Something warm spread through her chest, not pity, but a rare sense of connection. She asked softly, So, what were you doing at the Meridian last night? Tully laughed lightly. Investor meeting. I left early when I realized they only cared about money. And then I saw you. Saw me being humiliated, Ashley said under her breath. No, he replied. I saw you stand up without striking back. Strange, but that moment, it made me think if someone can keep their dignity in a room full of cruelty, that person deserves to hear, you did the right thing. Ashley met his eyes for the first time without flinching. Tully's voice softened. I don't pity you, Ashley. I want to know you better. Silence settled between them. Then she nodded. All right, but don't know if you're trying to turn me into your help to stranger story. I don't need saving. No, Tully said, smiling. I just want to sit here and drink coffee with you. That's all. They both laughed. A breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the faint scent of rain. Ashley looked outside and murmured, "It's been a long time since I felt this peaceful." "Coffee has its magic," Tully said. She smiled. "No, the person across the table does." That afternoon, back at the community center, Ashley still felt as if she were half dreaming. She was teaching her afternoon class basic reading and writing for older adults. Mrs. Ramona Wells, one of her oldest students, raised a trembling hand. "Teacher, how do you spell forgive?" Ashley smiled. "Why that word, Mrs. Wells?" "I want to write a letter to my granddaughter," the woman said softly. "She's angry because I never read to her when she was little. I want to tell her, I can read now." Ashley's throat tightened. She watched those frail hands holding the pen, shaking slightly. "The word goes like this," Ashley said gently, writing it slowly on the board. F-I-U-R-G-I-V-I. When the whole class repeated it aloud, their voices rose and fell like small waves. Ashley smiled. Maybe this was why she loved her work, because here, people learned not just to read, but to forgive, and to start again, not only with words but their hearts. When class ended, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, but she knew who it was. "I'm not good with words, but this morning, thank you. T." She smiled and replied, "Thank you for listening. That's rare." That evening, Tully drove along the Puget Sound. The city lights shimmered on the water. In the car, a slow jazz tune played softly. He thought about her quiet smile and tired eyes that refused to surrender. It had been long since anyone had made him believe in something as simple as kindness. The next day, at Shepherd Innovations, his assistant, Monica, walked in holding a bouquet of white tulips. "You're sending flowers? I thought you hated doing that." Tully smiled. Didn't hate it. Just never met anyone who deserved them until now. He scribbled a note. "Thank you for reminding me what dignity looks like. T." The bouquet arrived at Rainlight Community Center by noon. Ashley had just finished her class and stood frozen as her co-workers teased her, laughing. "Who are those from?" one asked. Ashley read the card and smiled softly. "From someone who believes in the magic of coffee." She placed the flowers on her desk and stared at them for a long time. It had been so long since someone made her feel seen. Not for her past, not out of obligation, but simply for being herself. As she left the center that afternoon, she noticed a black car parked across the street. The window rolled down Tully, with that faint, amused smile. "What a coincidence," she said, walking over. "Seattle's small," he replied lightly, as if they were only discussing the weather. "Do you have nothing better to do than drive around looking for strangers?" "No," Tully laughed. "Just lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time." They walked along the bay together. The water mirrored the city lights, hazy and beautiful. They talked about unimportant things, music, favorite foods, odd habits when stressed. No one mentioned the past. When night fell, Tully stopped before saying goodbye. "I might be too forward," he said quietly, "but I think we'll see each other again." Ashley tilted her head. "You're that sure of everything?" "Only when I believe it's worth it," he said. Then he walked away, leaving her in the cool salt air, waves lapping softly against the stones. She touched the tulips in her hands and smiled. Inside her, something stirred, not love, not yet, but something close enough to it. Something like hope. Seattle was raining again that morning. Fine drops slid down the window of Ashley's small apartment, spreading silver light across the old wooden table. She sat there, holding a cup of coffee, her gaze resting on the white tulips in the center of the table. Their fragrance was soft, pure, like it had come from a faraway field, untouched by mocking laughter or contemptuous eyes. She picked up the small card and read the words once more. "Thank you for reminding me what dignity looks like. T." Each time she read it, a quiet warmth rose inside her. Tully Shepherd, the man who had appeared out of nowhere on a rain-soaked night, who had stepped into her darkest moment and gently placed back into her hands something her family had taken long ago, her faith in herself. Ashley smiled faintly, speaking to no one. "Don't start dreaming, Ashley," she murmured. "You know who he is: successful, wealthy, a man who could meet hundreds of women. Don't turn yourself into a background character in someone else's story." Yet even as she said it, her fingers lightly brushed the tulip petals. The truth was, no one had ever given her flowers before. During her years in the Crudell household, each of Paisley's birthdays meant rooms filled with roses. Ashley, the adopted one, received only a perfunctory hug from her foster mother and the exact hollow words, "You're lucky to be here." No one had ever said, "Happy birthday." No one had ever said, "You deserve to be loved." But now someone had said, "Thank you," and somehow that simple phrase left her quiet and still inside. She glanced at the clock, 9:15 a.m. A message lit up her phone. "I'm at Rainlight Cafe. Coffee this morning with company? Tea." She smiled softly. She grabbed her coat and umbrella without hesitation and stepped out into the rain. Seattle was the same damp, grey, but the rain felt lighter today. When she entered the cafe, Tully was already there. He'd chosen the same corner table, the one by the window where the street came alive with passing strangers. He didn't speak when he saw her, just smiled and stood to pull out her chair. "Good morning," Ashley said gently. "Good morning," he replied. "You look happy. Someone sent flowers. Then that person has good taste." They both laughed. That morning passed like a song without music. They talked about everything: her favorite foods, the time he almost got expelled for hacking the school computer system, and his dream of opening a free vocational training center. Between the words, there were pauses, not awkward ones, but the kind that felt peaceful, like two weary souls had found shelter in each other. When it was time to leave, Tully asked, "Are you free tomorrow evening?" Ashley hesitated. "Depends on the reason." "No reason," he said. "I just want to hear more about your class. What about your work? The world keeps spinning." Tully smiled. "It won't miss me for one night." Ashley meant to say no, but his smile, so unassuming, so free of demand, made her pause. "All right," she said softly. "But I get to choose the place." "Fair deal," he said, tilting his head with a spark of mischief, as if they'd just signed a serious contract. The next evening, they met at a small restaurant by Green Lake. No neon lights, no loud music, only candlelight and the gentle sound of water against the window. Ashley told him about a 50-year-old student who had just learned to sign her name for the first time. Tully listened, eyes steady, as if every word she spoke deserved to be remembered. Then he asked, "Do you ever think people around you judge you unfairly?" Ashley smiled faintly. "They don't need to be fair. They need to believe they are." "And what about you?" "I'm not sure. Maybe I've just gotten used to being underestimated." Tully looked at her for a long moment. "Let me say this: I don't underestimate you, Ashley Crudell." His voice was low, warm, carrying something that made her heart skip a beat. She didn't reply. She just looked out the window, where rain fell softly over the lake. Tully didn't say goodbye when he drove her home that night. He opened the car door, waited for her to step inside the building, then said quietly, "Thank you for coming." She turned and smiled. "Thank you for asking." The door closed behind her, and as the elevator carried her upward, Ashley leaned her head against the wall, feeling as if another door deep within her had just begun to open. Tully and Ashley saw each other often in the following days, though neither said, "We're dating." They just found their way to each other, like two people caught in the rain, sharing the same shelter without meaning to. Every morning, Tully would send a simple text, "How's your coffee today?" And Ashley would answer, "Tastes a little gentler than yesterday." They talked on the phone at night, about small things: a new song, an old film, a book Tully was halfway through. Neither of them hurried, neither tried to prove anything. They were just two souls learning to trust again after being broken by the world. One afternoon, Tully came to the Rainlight Center. He sat quietly in the back, watching Ashley teach her class, and she didn't know he was there. Before her were 10 older students, sounding out each word with almost sacred patience. She smiled, correcting mistakes gently, encouraging them with her eyes. When the class ended, Tully stood and clapped. Ashley turned, startled. "What are you doing here?" "Watching a wonderful teacher," he said. She blushed, laughing. You're embarrassing me. No, he replied. I'm just telling the truth. He walked her outside, the sidewalk covered in red maple leaves. I've been thinking, Tully said, about starting a scholarship fund for people like your students. Ashley stopped. You're serious? I don't joke about things like that. But why? Because you've made me believe that those who never had a chance still deserve a choice. Her throat tightened. For the first time in years, her eyes grew wet. You don't have to do this for me. I'm not. Tully smiled. I'm doing it for what you believe in. The next day, Paisley saw them together at a cafe. From across the street, she stood watching, a cold smile curving her lips. Her eyes were sharp, part envy, part malice. That evening, in the Crudell mansion, she threw her wine glass to the floor, shattering it. She dares to rise above her place? Deline sipped her drink calmly. Don't worry, Paisley. Tully Shepherd isn't easily swayed. But what if he falls for her? Deline looked at her daughter, her voice like ice. Then we'll make sure he regrets it. Late that night, Ashley sat by her apartment window, looking over the city. She didn't know what awaited her. All she knew was she felt more at peace than ever in this quiet moment bathed in warm lamplight, with tulips still in bloom. And perhaps peace was where trust begins. Autumn in Seattle carried its own kind of sorrow. The trees along Queen Anne Avenue turned gold, bare, and bloomed again. The afternoon light, tinged with smoke, mirrored itself in the grey waters of Puget Sound. Everything moved slowly, beautifully, like something worth holding on to, just like the tender, fragile love that had begun between Ashley and Tully Shepherd. Since meeting him, life had grown lighter for Ashley. She arrived at the Rainlight Center in the mornings with a genuine smile. At night, she and Tully would walk by the lake or share quiet dinners at small cafes. He always let her choose, listened, and made her feel she mattered. But the world never allows happiness to last too long. And the cruelest wounds often come not from strangers but those who once called us family. That day, Paisley sat in her car, parked just a few meters from Rainlight Cafe. Through the misted glass, she watched Tully pull a chair for Ashley, smiling as though the world had narrowed to just the two. That smile made her grip her coffee cup so tightly it cracked. Tully Shepherd, she murmured, her eyes cold. Who do you think you are, choosing her over me? Her phone rang. The screen lit up with one name, Deline. Paisley answered, voice tight. Mother, I just saw them together. Calm down, Deline replied, her tone steady as ice. We won't make a scene. We'll be elegant. As always. What are you planning? A man like Tully Shepherd doesn't need confrontation. Just a few seeds of doubt. Get ready, we'll make him walk away from her himself. Paisley smirked. My favorite part. A few days later, Tully received an invitation to dinner from the Crudell family at their mansion on Queen Anne Hill. Ashley knew nothing of it. She only noticed his text that afternoon. I've got something tonight. See you in the morning. Sure. Everything okay? Yeah. Just work. But it didn't work. When Tully arrived at the mansion, the scene was meticulously staged. The dining room gleamed under chandelier light. Wine glasses glowed ruby red against pale marble, and Deline Crudell greeted him with a smile as sweet as honey. Tully, it's such a pleasure. I've heard so much about you. I've heard about your family too, Tully replied politely. Famous for your charitable work. Oh, just small efforts, she said, glancing toward Paisley. You've met my daughter, haven't you? She's quite an admirer of yours. Paisley rose, crossing the room. Her perfume was sharp and metallic. I'm honored, Mr. Shepherd. You're even more impressive than the press makes you out to be. Tully smiled faintly. Thank you. But I assume this dinner isn't merely social. Deline laughed lightly, her eyes glinting with quiet danger. You're direct. I like that. Then I'll be direct too. We've heard you're involved with Ashley Crudell. Tully set down his glass, gaze steady. Yes. She's remarkable. Paisley let out a small, mocking laugh. Remarkable. That's a sweet word. But tell me, Tully, what do you really know about her? About her past? The people she's been involved with? I know enough to respect her, he said. Then you don't know much. Paisley pulled a slim folder from her purse and set it on the table. Here, Something that might help you see more clearly. Deline added, in that careful, even tone, "We don't mean to interfere, dear. We worry for you, and for your reputation." Tully eyed the folder but didn't touch it. "What is this?" "Old records," Paisley said, shrugging. "Photos, messages, some financial notes. Looks like Ashley was involved in a scholarship fund scandal at Rainlight 3 years ago." Tully said nothing. Outside, the rain tapped against the windows. He wanted to laugh, which sounded absurd, but he couldn't ignore it. "You don't have to believe us," Paisley said, smiling wider. "Just take a look, decide for yourself." As Tully rose to leave, Deline's voice followed him, smooth as silk. "We hope you won't let emotion ruin your career, Tully. The world isn't kind to men who make sentimental choices." He left the mansion with the folder in his hand. The wind from the bay hit cold and heavy, like a warning. That night, Tully sat alone in his high-rise apartment, the folder spread open on the table. He hadn't wanted to look, but he did. He remembered Ashley's eyes, calm, honest, and a little afraid whenever someone asked about her past. He remembered her smile as she helped Mrs. Wells spell forgive. He remembered how she thanked a waiter softly and sincerely when no one else noticed. But then his eyes fell on a photograph inside the folder. Ashley, caught mid-frame, is taking an envelope from a man. The headline read, "Fraud Investigation, 2021. The picture was grainy and unclear, but her name was printed there, bold as an accusation, Ashley Crudell. Tully's fists tightened. No, he couldn't believe it. And yet he couldn't not wonder. One part of him wanted to burn it all. The other, the rational part, the businessman who had once been betrayed, wanted to know the truth. When Ashley called that evening, her voice was soft, as always. "What are you up to?" Tully hesitated, looking over something. "Maybe we should talk." They met the next night at the cafe by Green Lake, the same one where they'd once laughed together. Ashley arrived first, in a grey sweater, her face brighter than usual. But the moment she saw him, she knew. "What's wrong?" she asked. Tully placed the folder on the table. "Someone gave me this." She looked down only for a heartbeat, but her face changed. "It's them, Paisley and Deline?" She nodded. Silent, Tully exhaled. "I don't believe them, but I need to hear it from you." She met his eyes, tired, but not angry. "You think I'll sit here and explain? Tell you I'm innocent, a victim? No, Tully, I won't." Her voice didn't shake. It only carried quiet sorrow. "Because if you need papers to believe me, you never really did." He tried to speak, but she was already standing. "You once asked why I'm afraid to love again. This is why. People always need proof to trust, never just a heart." She picked up her bag and turned to leave. A gust of wind swept between them, scattering a few leaves across the table. "Ashley," he called after her, but she didn't look back. That night, Tully drove along the edge of the bay, two halves of himself at war, one still believing, one doubting. Ashley sat by the window in her small apartment, cradling the now wilted tulips. With each petal that fell, more of her faith slipped away. She whispered to herself, barely audible through the rain, "I should have known better than to dream someone might be different. The world never changes." Rain fell over Seattle that night like a curtain of mist. Tully sat alone in his apartment, high above the city in Shepherd Tower. The folder Paisley had given him lay on the table before him open, raw, like a wound refusing to close. The soft lamplight cast his shadow across the wall, the silhouette of a man asking himself the most challenging question. Had he just lost the best thing that ever happened to him because of a few pieces of paper? He hadn't slept in 3 nights. The pages seemed to breathe, whispering each time he tried to close them. And in his head, 2 voices kept colliding, Paisley's sharp, "She's not who you think she is," and Ashley's quiet, steady one from that rain-soaked night. "If you need proof to believe me, you never really did." Tully pressed his palms to his temples. He'd always trusted logic, evidence, and control. But the higher he climbed, the more he realized how the world could break over the most minor things, especially the ones you couldn't prove. His phone buzzed. A message from Daniel Cho, head of his security and investigations team. I reviewed the file. "Something's off. Images are doctored, and dates don't line up. Want me to dig deeper? Tully typed 2 words. Do it. 3 days later, the report landed on his desk. He opened it, line by line, peeling back layers of deceit. The photographs were edited with outdated software, and the metadata showed they'd been created only weeks ago. The name of the supposed whistleblower is non-existent in Rainlight Center's records, and the incriminating email, the one tied to a scholarship fraud, had come from an IP address owned by a PR firm funded by the Crudell family. Tully sat perfectly still. Only the sound of rain against glass filled the silence. He leaned back, exhaling, feeling the sting of humiliation settle in his chest. God, he whispered, what have I done? Monica Pierce, his assistant, stepped in quietly with a cup of hot coffee. You okay? No, he said hoarsely. I just found out I'm Seattle's most expensive fool. Monica frowned. Ashley? He nodded, wordless. She set the cup down and met his eyes. Are you going to tell her? I don't even know if she'll listen. Then make her want to, Monica said. He looked up. Monica's voice softened, but stayed firm. You told me once you respected her because she didn't fight back. Now it's your turn to show respect means action, not apology. The words hit like a jolt. Tully grabbed his coat, the folder clutched tight in his hand. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, and he knew it was time for the truth to speak. Ashley was teaching when Tully found her at the Rainlight Center. Afternoon sunlight filtered through the windows, glinting on her dark brown hair as she leaned over a student's workbook. When he walked in, a few students murmured, whispering, Miss Ashley, someone's here for you. She turned. For a heartbeat, the room fell silent. She didn't speak. Her eyes met his, no anger, only a thin veil of sadness, soft as smoke. What are you doing here? Tully stepped closer. To make it right. You seem to make a habit of that, she said quietly. Not this time. He placed the folder on the table. I had everything rechecked. It was all fake. The photos, the documents, the names. He drew a breath, voice trembling slightly. I didn't believe them, Ashley. I just didn't dare to believe in myself. And that's on me. She looked down at the open folder. The false evidence that had shattered her trust lay there, stripped bare. But pain doesn't vanish with proof. I'm not angry you doubted me, she said softly. I'm just sorry you didn't stand beside me. Tully clenched his hands. I'll never let that happen again, even if it means standing against the world. Her eyes softened. And if I don't want you anymore, I'll still protect you, he said. Not for love, but for what's right. A quiet moment passed. Then Ashley smiled, the first genuine smile in days. You're terrible at apologizing. I know, but you're good at telling the truth. She exhaled. I believe you. News of their reconciliation spread faster than they expected. Seattle was small and the world of the wealthy. Even smaller. Headlines began to whisper. Tully Shepherd and the adopted teacher fairy tale romance or PR stunt. Paisley stared at her phone, fury flickering behind her perfect smile. A fairy tale? Fine. Let's show them how fairy tales really end. Ashley and Tully, meanwhile, ignored the noise. They spent their days quietly, unhurried. Tully took her to his office, introducing her to Monica and the investigation team. This, he said proudly, is why I started the new education fund. I want to build something that lasts longer than money. Ashley blushed. You should work on sounding more modest. I'm trying, he said, grinning. It's hard. At night, they walked along the waterfront. Tully told her about growing up poor, about the first time he could afford new shoes, and how it felt to be chosen finally. Ashley spoke of being locked outside as a child whenever she misbehaved, of the fear that came every time she heard Paisley call her name. I used to think if I were better, they'd love me, she said. No one should have to change to be loved, Tully answered quietly, and at that moment, she realized that some truths didn't need to be proven. But happiness is fragile. Inside the Crudell mansion, deceit was still alive. Paisley stood by the window, phone to her ear. We're playing the final move, she said. I want a video realistic. I'll send you her photos and voice clips. The voice on the other end was cold. Deepfake in 8 kelvins. Easy. 3 days. What do you want her to say? Paisley's lips curved. Make it look like she's betraying him. I'll handle the rest. A week later, Ashley noticed someone following her on her way to work, a man in a black coat and hood, always lingering near the corner by the center. She told Tully, and he immediately ordered security footage checked. That night, Daniel reported back. Nothing unusual. Might be a coincidence. But Tully's unease deepened. He turned to her and said, "I don't think they're done yet. Promise me you won't walk alone at night." Ashley smiled softly. "Are you worried about me?" "No," he replied. "I'm terrified of losing you again." That night, Rain returned to Seattle. Ashley stood by her window, watching the city blur beneath the drizzle. A strange mix of calm and worry filled her chest. She touched the cold glass, feeling the chill seep into her fingertips. Maybe peace was only temporary. But this time, she wasn't alone. Because somewhere out there, someone was awake too. Someone ready to fight for the truth, for her, and for the love they had just begun to believe in again. Seattle had entered the end of winter. Rain fell almost daily, long, thin, and bone-deep cold, as if testing how much the people here could endure. But for Ashley, this winter felt warmer than all the others, because for the first time in many years, someone was waiting for her after work. Each afternoon, when classes at the Rainlight Center ended, Tully would be there leaning casually against his car, arms crossed, grey coat draped neatly, a gentle smile on his face. They didn't need to make plans. They knew they would meet. They didn't need destinations. A walk by the bay, sharing one umbrella, listening to the rain tapping on the water was enough. Tully wasn't a man of flowery words, but how he looked at her said everything he didn't. Once, sitting together in a quiet cafe on Capitol Hill, he told her, "I never thought I'd believe in love after 30. "So what changed?" she asked. "You didn't ask me to believe," he said. "You just asked me to be real." The words were simple, yet they sank into her heart like music on a cold night. They began to slip gently into each other's lives. Tully learned to drink tea because she found his coffee too strong. Ashley learned to sit quietly in his car while he took business calls, no longer feeling she didn't belong in his world. Beneath the city lights, they looked like an ordinary couple, a successful man and a community teacher, but to each other, they were a refuge from the storm. One evening, when the rain finally eased, Tully took Ashley somewhere he had never shown anyone, the rooftop of Shepherd Tower. From there, Seattle stretched below them in a shimmer of mist and light. The city glowed like a field of fallen stars, reflections trembling on the dark bay. "This is where I come when I can't think," he said. Ashley folded her arms, smiling. "So you can't think tonight?" "No," he replied softly. "Tonight, I want to remember." "Remember what?" "That I'm lucky." She looked up at him. His eyes held such warmth that she forgot the chill biting her skin for a moment. Then he stepped closer, taking her hand gently. "I once lost everything because I trusted the wrong people," he said slowly. "But this time, I won't let fear make my choices." Ashley stayed silent. She knew he was talking about the past, the night he doubted her, the days she'd cried herself breathless. Her lips trembled, her eyes wet. Tully's voice was low but steady. "If you'll let me, I want to stay, even if the storm comes again." She nodded faintly. "I don't need anyone to protect me," she whispered, "but I don't want to fight alone anymore." And they held each other amid wind and city lights, no promises, no grand words, just warmth and truth. Because sometimes, love doesn't need to be loud. It only needs to stay when everything else leaves. The next day, Ashley taught as usual. Tully met with the city council about the education fund they had started together. Neither of them knew that elsewhere, in a sleek office across town, Paisley Crudell was signing a contract. A man in glasses, calm, precise, a technician said, "We'll need a few voice samples, a few videos. Do you have them?" Paisley opened her laptop, showing clips from community fundraisers where Ashley appeared. "Everything you need," she said, a thin smile on her lips. "I want it real enough that even she doubts herself." The man nodded, eyes cold. "We're professionals. No trace. 3 days." Paisley poured herself a glass of wine. "Good. I need the world to believe she's not worthy of him." 3 days later, something strange began. Ashley started feeling watched. At first, she thought it was her imagination, But she noticed the same silver car parked across the street each evening after work. One night, she saw a figure standing at the corner, hood up, cigarette glowing faintly, and no matter the weather, he was always there. She told Tully, who frowned, "I'll have someone check the area, probably just a journalist. Or someone else," she murmured. He took her hand. "Don't worry. No one's going to touch you again." The words comforted her for a few days. Then one morning, as Ashley was preparing her lesson plan, her phone began to buzz non-stop. Calls, messages, and notifications are flooding in. She picked it up and her heart stopped. On the screen was a video. Her or someone who looked exactly like her in a hotel room with a strange man. The footage was blurry but clear enough. The voice was hers. The face was hers. The caption read, "The truth behind the fairy tale. The philanthropic teacher and the billionaire." Ashley froze. Her hands shook. Tears came before she could stop them. Her phone rang again, Tully's name flashing. She couldn't answer. She couldn't breathe. At the Shepherd Tower offices, the news hit like a storm. Monica rushed in, pale. "You need to see this." On the big screen, the video was playing, already shared thousands of times. Tully stood, face drained of color. "Oh my God," he whispered. "No, it can't be." Danielle burst in, voice urgent. "We're tracking the source. It's likely a deep fake, high-end, compelling. How long until you can prove it?" "A few hours to analyze. A few days for evidence." Tully's voice hardened. "You have a few hours. She has minutes before the world turns on her." Ashley hid in her apartment, lights off. Reporters called, friends called, even the Rainlight Center called. Her phone overflowed with hate. Fraud, liar, fake saint, billionaire's fool. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing silently. Years spent building her dignity undone by one video. When the knock came, she thought it was the press until Tully's voice sounded from the other side. "Ashley, it's me. Open the door. I don't want you to see me like this," she said weakly. "I'm not leaving. Not this time." She opened the door. He stepped inside and found her on the floor, eyes red, hair tangled, face streaked with tears. Without a word, he knelt and pulled her into his arms. "I believe you," he whispered, "even if no one else does." "You don't have to say that," she choked. "No," he said firmly. "I say it because it's true." Outside, rain began to fall again, steady, endless, as if the whole city was weeping with them. That night, Tully's tech team worked without rest in the Shepherd Tower offices. They magnified frames, traced pixel patterns, and analyzed motion data. By dawn, Daniel entered with the results. "It's a deepfake. Payment source leads to Paisley Crudell." Tully stood silent for a moment. "Do we have proof?" Daniel nodded. "Enough to turn the world upside down." "Then get ready," Tully said, voice cold and steady. "Press conference. Tomorrow." Ashley sat by the window back in her apartment, unaware of what was coming. But for the first time in days, she wasn't afraid. Because when Tully said, "I believe you," she understood. Even if the whole world denied her, one person's belief could be enough. She looked out at the city as dawn broke after the rain. Seattle still glistened, the first light cutting through the clouds. A new chapter was about to begin, not just for her, but for the truth itself. The news exploded overnight. From New York to Los Angeles, from Twitter to every front page, the name Ashley Crudell was everywhere. No one mentioned her community classes anymore. No one remembered the education fund she and Tully had started. Now, there were only two words: scandal. Headlines screamed as if the world already knew the truth. The secret behind the woman who captured billionaire Tully Shepherd's heart. Shocking video reveals the real Ashley Crudell. From fairy tale to disaster, her photo flooded every feed. Comments poured in, half outrage, half mockery. Ashley sat in her small apartment, watching the endless stream of news. She tried to turn off her phone, but the notifications kept coming, pulsing like the heartbeat of something breaking inside her. Messages came from people who once called her a friend. "I'm sorry, but we can't keep working with you. The center's under pressure from the public. Maybe you should take a break. May God grant you peace." Each line was a blade. She didn't cry anymore. Tears had run out the night before. All that remained was emptiness. Meanwhile, Tully was fighting a different war on the top floor of Shepherd Tower. Stock dropped 14% this morning, Monica reported, her voice tight. The board wants you to stay out of the spotlight. They say the scandal's damaging the brand. Tully stood by the window, the city below him a battlefield cloaked in smoke. The brand, he repeated. That's what they're calling it? Monica nodded uneasily. You know how this world works. Tully turned, his gaze sharp as steel. Then it's time the world learned how I work. He faced Daniel. I want the entire origin of that video traced in 24 hours. Who made it? Who paid for it? I want every name. And get the legal team ready. We're not defending. We're going on the attack. Daniel hesitated. Understood. But be ready, Tully. When you strike back, they'll drag your company, family, and friends into this. The storm won't be small. Tully looked out at the rain-slicked skyline. Let it come, he said quietly. I'm not afraid of storms if the woman I love is in the middle of it. That night, Tully went to Ashley's apartment. She opened the door after a long pause. Her eyes were red, her voice steady but tired. Tully, you shouldn't be here, she said. They're waiting to catch you walking out of this building. I don't care. You should. They'll use it against you. I've already let them take everything, my reputation, money, and name. But they can't take my faith in you. She turned away. They have the video, Tully. The world believes what it sees. The world always believes what it sees, he said softly, until someone shows it the truth. He stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. And I'm going to show them. Ashley trembled, and at last the last tear fell. I'm scared, Tully. Scared that even when they know the truth, I'll still be remembered for a lie. Then we'll make our love louder than that lie, he said. She broke down, burying her face in his chest. And in that small apartment, while the city outside buzzed with headlines about the scandal of the century, two people stood untouched by it all, holding on to the only real thing, each other. The next morning, the Shepherd Foundation's press office released a statement. Tully Shepherd will issue a formal statement at 10 a.m. at the Central Hall. The event will be broadcast live. The announcement hit the media like fire in dry grass. Reporters flooded Seattle. News vans lined the streets. Some called it a reckless move. Others called it a desperate attempt to save face. But Tully knew precisely what he was doing. 9:59 a.m. The auditorium was packed. Camera flashes flickered like lightning. On stage, Tully walked out with Ashley beside him. She wore a white blouse and no makeup. Her face was calm, but her eyes were unwavering. A wave of murmurs swept the room. Millions were watching live. Tully's voice was low, steady, and unflinching through the hall. I know why you're here today, and I won't hide. A video spread online, accusing the woman I love of things that never happened. Let me be clear that video is entirely fake. Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd. He raised a hand for silence. We have proof. Deepfake technology can recreate faces, voices, and gestures. But there's one thing it can't replicate: human decency. He nodded to Daniel. The screen behind them came alive, frames magnified, showing mismatched lighting, unnatural eye movements, off-toned skin. Technical graphs lined the screen, and every error lay bare. Then, in bold letters at the bottom of the display, payment source, account registered to Paisley Crudell. The room erupted in shock. Tully's voice grew quieter, heavy. The people behind this didn't just want to destroy a woman. They wanted to teach us to trust lies over truth. But I refuse that lesson. He took Ashley's hand and faced the crowd. This is Ashley Crudell, the woman I love, who taught me that kindness is stronger than power. If the world chooses to believe a lie, I will make my belief public today. He turned to her. His voice dropped, steady and full of warmth. I believe you, not because I want to, because I know. For a moment, the hall was silent. Then applause broke out loud, rolling, like rain after drought. Camera flashes blurred into white light. In the audience, some people cried. Some bowed their heads, ashamed for having believed the worst. Meanwhile, in the Crudell mansion, Paisley threw her phone across the floor as the headline appeared. Source of fake video exposed, member of Crudell family confirmed. Her mother, Deline, sank onto the couch, whispering, "We've gone too far, Paisley." Paisley stared at the screen, her face twisted with rage and fear. No, no, it's not possible. He can't have turned it around this fast. But Tully had. 3 days later, every major outlet published corrections. Video of Ashley Crudell confirmed deepfake. Tully Shepherd files defamation and privacy lawsuit against Crudell family. The woman defamed and the man who refused to bow to lies. Public opinion shifted. Those who once sneered now wrote messages of remorse. "I'm sorry, Ashley. I believed the wrong story. Thank you, Tully, for not giving up." Ashley didn't read them. She stood by the Rainlight Center window, watching the children laugh in the courtyard, and whispered to herself. At last, the truth found its voice. That afternoon, Tully arrived quietly at her office. No press, no attention, just him, holding a bouquet of lavender. "You know," he said, smiling softly, "the scent of lavender reminds me of the first time we talked. You said it smelled like peace." Ashley smiled back, her eyes warm. "Peace doesn't come from a scent, Tully. It comes from the person who makes you believe the world can still be fair." He chuckled. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be that person." That night, for the first time in weeks, Seattle didn't rain. The clouds parted, revealing a handful of faint stars. On the balcony of her apartment, Ashley and Tully sat side by side, saying nothing. They didn't need to, because sometimes, after the storm, the purest kind of love is the kind that breathes quietly, steady, shared, and still there when the world finally falls silent. Spring returned to Seattle. Buds began to bloom along the bay. The rain softened, and pale sunlight spilled across the streets, as if the city itself were being washed clean of all that had darkened it. But for the Crudell family, this spring carried not the scent of blossoms, but the sharpness of indictments. News broke across every outlet. Paisley Crudell indicted for defamation and dissemination of falsified information. The same media that once amplified her cruelty now turned on her with ruthless speed. That night, the grand mansion on Queen Anne Hill, once lit up every evening, was silent. Deline Crudell sat on the sofa, her wineglass trembling in her hand. Across from her sat Paisley, the once flawless woman, now hollow-eyed, hair disheveled, her voice raw from crying. "Mother," she whispered, choking on the words, "it's all gone. The contracts, the friends, they treat me like a criminal." Deline said nothing. In the dim light, she looked older, tired in a way that went beyond years. "What have you done, Paisley?" she asked quietly. "We can hate, envy, but we cannot destroy an innocent person." Paisley let out a bitter laugh. "Innocent? You never thought she was innocent. You couldn't stand anyone loving her." Silence fell heavy between them. Then Deline set the glass down, stood up, and looked at her daughter for a long, weary moment. "I have nothing left to say. If you don't stop, the law will teach you the lesson I failed to." Paisley's eyes filled again. "Even you're abandoning me?" "Not abandoning," her mother said softly. "Just no longer protecting." The door closed. The click of the lock sounded like a verdict. Across town, Ashley returned to teach her first class since the scandal. When she entered the room, everyone rose and clapped. Mrs. Ramona Wells, the eldest student, wiped her eyes and said, "We always believed you, Miss Ashley. Videos can lie, but hearts can't." Laughter and applause filled the room. Ashley smiled through tears, not of sorrow, but of gratitude. People could still be good. After class, Tully waited by the door, watching her from a distance. She stood in her beige sweater, her face glowing in the late sun, laughing with her students. He realized then how much stronger she was than he'd ever understood. When she finally approached, he held out his hand. "Walk with me?" "Sure," she said, smiling. "As long as no reporters are hiding behind the bushes." "I sent them all on vacation," he teased. They both laughed. They walked along the waterfront, waves lapping softly at the pier. "I used to think," Ashley said, "that if they apologized, I'd forgive them. But now I don't need an apology. I want to live kindly enough to never become like them." Tully looked at her, his eyes gentle. "Forgiveness isn't about them deserving it. It's about you deserving peace." She nodded, smiled faintly, and said nothing more. That night, as city lights came on, the Shepherd Foundation officially launched the Light Fund, a community education project for the elderly and underprivileged youth, inspired by Ashley's journey. She was asked to speak at the opening ceremony. Standing beneath the golden glow of the stage, her voice was calm but sure. "There was a time I thought I'd lost everything, my work, my name, my faith. But I learned that what's real never disappears. It waits for us to be brave enough to find it again." She paused, then smiled toward Tully in the audience. "I'm not here to tell my story. I'm here because I believe light isn't something we discover. It's what we become once we stop fearing the dark." Applause rolled through the hall like a tide. Tully sat in the front row, pride and tenderness shining in his eyes, a feeling too vast for words, somewhere between gratitude, love, and awe. Weeks later, the court reached its decision. Paisley was sentenced to probation and ordered to issue a public apology and pay damages to Ashley. Deline withdrew from public life, retreating to a quiet home outside the city. The media buzzed for a few days, then moved on new headlines, new scandals. But for Ashley, silence was the sweetest reward. One morning, she received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thank you for not becoming cruel, no matter how cruel the world was to you. P." Ashley read it several times. The handwriting was unmistakably Paisley's. She exhaled softly. She didn't know if it was remorse or closure, but she smiled. "At least," she whispered, "even storms know when to fade." That evening, Ashley and Tully stood again on the rooftop of Shepherd Tower. The city glowed beneath them, wind sweeping gently across their faces just like that night months ago. Only now there was no fear, no doubt. Only light reflected softly between them. Tully wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "What do you think you'll do next?" "I want to open another class," she said, "in Tacoma, for people who never had the chance." "That's wonderful," he said. "I'll fund it." "No," she smiled. "You'll teach," he chuckled. "Teach what?" "How to believe." He laughed, pulling her closer. "I'm still learning that myself. Then we'll learn together." They sat side by side, listening to the hum of cars below, the quiet rhythm of the city breathing. It was a small moment, but Ashley knew this was the light after the storm she'd always dreamed of. Below them, Seattle carried on busy, noisy, careless, and full of love all at once. And somewhere within its endless motion, two people who had walked through every kind of darkness finally understood. Happiness isn't when life is perfect. It's when you find someone still holding your hand, even as the world falls apart. A rare May morning in Seattle came without rain. Sunlight slipped through the window panes, glinting across the table and waking Ashley with the gentle gold she'd been waiting for. She opened the window and drew a deep breath. The air was cool, tinged with the smell of roasted coffee from the cafe downstairs and the lilac blooming in the courtyard. On the table lay the morning paper. In the corner of the front page, a small headline read, "Shepherd Foundation opens new community center in Tacoma for those who never had a chance." Ashley smiled softly. The word Tacoma stirred something tender in her. It was the city Tully had told her about, where he'd grown up poor, where mornings meant work instead of school. And now, that city would be where they began again, not to escape, but to plant what they had found: faith. 2 weeks later, a modest white building in a quiet Tacoma neighborhood opened its doors. A brass plaque on the wooden entrance read, "The Lighthouse, where no one is forgotten." The opening ceremony was simple but heartfelt. No reporters, no flashbulbs, just neighbors, a few children, some former Rainlight students, and eyes full of gratitude. Ashley wore a pale blue blouse, hair tied neatly back. Tully stood beside her, wearing a paint-stained apron he'd spent the morning helping volunteers repaint the back wall. "Think we can keep this place running?" she asked, half serious and teasing. "No," he said, smiling. "But I think we'll have enough faith to figure it out. Faith doesn't pay the bills." "No," he laughed, "but it's how we learn to make them payable." Their laughter carried through the courtyard, light, easy, filled with the quiet relief of people who'd survived the worst and still chosen to hope. That afternoon, Ashley stood before her first class at the Lighthouse. 12 adult students sat around old wooden tables, some recently released from prison, some laid off, others who had never finished high school. Looking at their faces, She felt it again. This was where she belonged. "We'll start with one word," she said, picking up a piece of chalk. She wrote on the board, "Believe. Not just our first lesson," she said, smiling, "but the first thing we all need for life. Sometimes, believing in someone else is how we learn to believe in ourselves." Outside, through the open window, Tully watched quietly. The sunlight touched her hair, turning it to a soft halo. He didn't step inside, he only wanted to remember that moment. The woman he loved, turning her pain into purpose. When class ended, Ashley stepped out onto the porch where Tully sat on the steps with 2 cans of lemonade. He handed her one. "Drink up, Professor. Were you spying on me?" she teased. "Of course. I wouldn't miss your first lesson." She leaned her head on his shoulder, smiling. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and rose. It was a perfect evening, not grand, not silent, just warm and shared. "I think this is what happiness looks like," she murmured. "It looks like you," he said. Life in Tacoma moved slowly. No honking cars, no clicking cameras, just the hum of quiet streets, the smell of fresh bread, and laughter spilling from the lighthouse. Each morning, Ashley taught reading and writing. Each afternoon, Tully ran workshops on how to send an email, manage finances, and use technology without fear. He often joked, "See, even billionaires can teach Excel, and broke teachers," she'd reply, "can teach courage." They worked late, ate sandwiches on the steps, and laughed about small things. No one mentioned the past anymore. They didn't need to. They turned it into the foundation of their present. One day, a young woman came to class, clutching an application. "My name's Maria," she said softly. "I dropped out because people said I was stupid, but I want to try again." Ashley took the form and met her eyes. "No one's stupid for being told they are," she said gently. "They just haven't been taught the right way yet." Maria smiled through tears. From the doorway, Tully watched, murmuring, "Do you realize, Ashley? You're becoming the person you once needed." She turned to him, eyes bright. "And so are you, Tully. You're becoming the man you once wished would believe in you." They smiled at each other. No more words were needed, their lives were saying enough. Months later, the lighthouse became a quiet symbol of hope across Washington state. The same papers that once destroyed Ashley now called her project a testament to kindness and resilience. In an interview, a journalist asked Tully, "What made you believe in this project so deeply?" He replied, "Because I know what it feels like when someone believes in you, and I want to give that feeling to many people as possible." That evening, they watched the interview together. Ashley leaned against him. "Maybe we had to go through everything," she said, "just to return to the simplest thing, kindness." He smiled. Kindness never goes out of style. The Tacoma night was quiet. The wind carried a hint of salt from the sound, and moonlight poured over the small garden behind the center, where the students had planted their first flowers. Among them were white tulips, the same kind Tully had given her the night they met. Ashley looked at them and said softly, "I remember that night, leaving the Meridian." Tully chuckled. "I remember too. A girl standing in the rain, not crying, just looking up at the sky. And you said, 'What was it?' I said, 'That's a sentence worth hearing twice.'" She laughed. And maybe from that night on, everything changed. He looked at her, eyes tender. "Not just for you, Ashley. For me too. You made me believe that even in a city of rain, there can still be a first sunny day." She rested her head on his shoulder, eyes closed, smiling. "The first sunny day," she whispered, "is when you finally believe you deserve happiness." Late summer in Tacoma. The sky was a deep, endless blue, and sunlight spilled across the lighthouse courtyard, making the white tulips shimmer like small lanterns. Ashley knelt by the front gate, planting a new sign. "Fall skills classes, now open for enrollment." Sweat dotted her forehead, but she was smiling. Inside, laughter rang out, the sound of students joking, children chasing each other through the yard. This house, once only a dream, was now real. A place people came to not for pity, but for the chance to live better. Down the hall, Tully was wiring a new digital sign. His sleeves were rolled up, hair slightly messy in the breeze, face calm like a man who had finally found his place. When he looked up and saw her watching, he smiled. "The board's going live tonight," he said. "Promise it won't explode." Ashley laughed. "Good. I'd rather not rename this place from the lighthouse to the firehouse." They both laughed, the sound light as the wind chimes swaying by the porch. That afternoon, when the last class ended, Tully said, "Are you free tonight?" "Depends what you're planning." "Dinner." "And a question." She raised an eyebrow, smiling. "That sounds serious." "Never been more so." That night, they sat on the roof of the lighthouse. Below them, Tacoma glowed in gold. Beyond it, Puget Sound shimmered under the moon. Tully poured 2 glasses of wine. For a while, they didn't speak. "Do you remember the night we met?" he asked. Ashley nodded. "In the rain. At the Meridian. I still remember your face, not crying, not apologizing, just standing tall, because I was too tired to bow, and that made me lift my head and see my life differently." He smiled gently, then pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. No spotlight, no performance, just moonlight, and 2 people who had been through enough pain to know the value of simplicity. "I can't promise life will be easy," he said quietly, "but I promise this: I'll never doubt you again." He opened the box. Inside lay a simple silver ring, unadorned, with tiny words engraved inside. "Still here." Ashley's eyes filled, not with sorrow this time, but peace. "I used to think no one could ever make me believe again," she whispered. "But you didn't make me believe, you made me know." He held out his hand. She nodded, her smile trembling. "Yes, Tully, I will." They didn't kiss right away. They just held each other's hands, watching the city lights below thousands of glowing windows, like small souls learning again to trust in goodness. The news of their engagement spread fast, but this time there was no noise, no gossip. Headlines called it Seattle's most redemptive love story. But to Ashley, it wasn't redemption. It was simply a beginning by another name. Not a happy ending, but the start of a quieter, more authentic life. A year later, the lighthouse had 2 new branches, one in Spokane, one in Everett. Ashley was busier than ever, but still brewed morning coffee for the team. On her desk stood a small framed photo of the first opening ceremony, she and Tully surrounded by hundreds of people, hands clasped, eyes shining. That morning, Tully arrived late, holding a paper bag. "Brought waffles for the office," he said. "Though I think they're all just waiting for your coffee." She laughed. "Maybe it's because I add kindness to the pot." "And I add debt," he teased. They sat on the porch, watching new students walking through the gate, a young woman with an old coat and a folder clutched tight. An older man bent over a notebook, a mother holding her child's hand. Ashley said softly, "I used to think you needed power to make the world better. Turns out, all you need is to listen." Tully nodded. "I used to think I had to build technology to change the world. Now I know you change it one person at a time, and let them change the next." They looked at each other and smiled. That evening, their wedding took place right there in the courtyard. No press, no extravagance. Just friends, students, a few white tulips, and strings of soft golden lights. Ashley wore a simple dress and held lavender. Tully wore a white shirt, no tie. Monica officiated, her voice thick with emotion. "There's no such thing as a perfect couple," she said, "but there are people who make each other better. And today, we're lucky enough to witness that." Ashley met Tully's gaze steady, calm, full of peace. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, he whispered, "Still here." She smiled, tears glinting in her eyes. "And always will be." Applause rose, blending with laughter, children's shouts, and the evening wind. Above them, the sunset washed everything in warm orange light. Later that night, when everyone had gone, they sat on the steps surrounded by the glow of the leftover lights. Ashley rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you think," she asked softly, "if I hadn't walked out of the Meridian that night, we still would have met?" Tully smiled. "Maybe, but walking away was exactly how you found your way here." She nodded, gazing out into the distance. A gentle breeze swept across the yard. The tulips swayed, their petals catching the light like memories smiling back. Tully squeezed her hand and said quietly, "You know, every beginning has a name, and for me this one's name is Ashley Crudell. She laughed through her tears. And for me, it's faith. Night settled over Seattle. Car lights stretched like a moving constellation along the highway leading back to the city. On the rooftop of the lighthouse, two people who had once been broken by the world now sat in stillness, listening to the wind. No fear, no bitterness, just a love made real and a new life unfolding. When you love someone with your whole heart, Ashley whispered, the past stops being a burden and becomes a witness instead. And sometimes, happiness doesn't need fireworks or promises, just someone who's still there. When the light goes out,